What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me on this episode of Untamed Opinion. I am joined by a friend of mine for many, many years, police officer and now detective. Uh, for security reasons and for anonymity, we do not have his name listed here. If you're watching us here on YouTube, he is going to be anonymous to those who don't know him. For those who do know him and recognize his voice, please do not mention his name. Please do not go and share this with everybody. And it's fine to share the discussion, but please don't put his name on blast as this police officer slash detective has, and I have agreed to, and I will not be using his name. I hope not to use his name as it's probably out of habit. So thank you for joining me, Detective.
Yeah, my pleasure, brother. Good to have here. Let's have some fun with this.
Absolutely. In this discussion, I approach you to wanting to have a discussion regarding law enforcement because this is this day and age with social media and with everybody's access to information. Everybody tends to have an opinion on law enforcement. Law enforcement is good. Law enforcement's not good. That's kind of discussion I wanted to have with you, and I appreciate you joining me on this. And but before we get to that main part of the discussion, let's backtrack 15 plus years ago when you decided to become a police officer. Why did you decide to become a police officer, and what motivated you to do that?
Believe it or not, it's not your typical cliche of people who say they became cops because they want to help people and whatnot, and they always dreamt of being a cop since they were kids. I was at a pinnacle in my life where I was really lost. I didn't know what avenue to take, and I knew that I was disciplined. I knew I had a strong work ethic. I knew I was someone that was honest and didn't like cheating and didn't like stealing and was always into the good morals and ethics of life and principles. So a good friend of mine who passed away one day tells me, hey, why don't we go become cops? And I'm in the restaurant business with nothing else in life. So, I start doing research. I go ahead and sign up for the academy, pass all the tests, and I get hired as an independent individual. Went through the academy, passed with a 96.8 grade point average, which was the second highest in the class. And, it took me a couple of years to get hired, but I finally did get hired by a small agency in South Florida, where I spent 4 years developing my craft there and learned a lot from my field training officer, who is one of the best officers in South Florida, period, hands down. He was a very knowledgeable and passionate individual who taught me a lot. From there, I moved on to what's considered a medium-sized department, probably about 150 manpower size-wise. Spent a good 12 years there. Again, continue to develop my craft, learn some new techniques because it was a different culture in that department. My first department was primarily a LGB, what's it called? LGB, the lesbian gay community,
Right.
LGBTA. It was primarily that and the Haitian community. This second department that I worked at was primarily Central and South American. So it's definitely diversified. And then about a year ago, I moved over back to a small agency, which now is primarily an American community. It's like 85, 90% white, primarily Jewish, and just continue to develop my career there and make it to the end game, God willing.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Congratulations on being this far, and thank you for your service. Being in it this long, it's definitely not an easy profession. It definitely could take your toll on you. I know you were on patrol for 8 to 9 years, and then you went into being a detective for over the last 7 to 8 years. So it's definitely not easy. So thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been a bumpy roads on the way here. Like you said, I did patrol work from mainly the first 8 years of my career, and then I did what's called CST, Crime Suppression Team. Did that for a good 2.5, 3 years in the medium-sized department, and then from there I just did investigations where I transferred this smaller agency now, and I just got back up to investigations a couple months ago, which was the ultimate mission for me coming over here.
All right, that's awesome. So when you were becoming a police officer and you were going through the academy, and even through your years of service, and even up till now, what kind of training happens in the beginning, and what kind of continuous ongoing training happens as an officer or detective?
The academy alone is just basic in training as far as just to get you certified and get you licensed in the state. You do a lot of basic legal, a lot of basic interpersonal skills. You do basic firearms, basic driving a police vehicle, which is driving. You do some defensive tactics and whatnot. It's pretty much just to get you what's the minimum criteria by Florida Department of Law Enforcement for you to be a certified cop. Once you're on the beat, depending on the agency that you work in, most agencies will mandate a lot of training throughout your career. Some agencies will leave it up to you, the officer, to enhance your own career, depending again the agency, because it all depends on call volume, how busy the agency is, whether or not they can afford to send you to a training and so forth. Me, I was fortunate because I did start off at a small agency and I went to a medium-sized agency where it was one of the newest departments in South Florida at the time. I took advantage of training and I took pretty much every training that's out there for law enforcement, from basic radar laser to investigative courses before I even became a detective, before I even considered investigations. Do I think it's enough? I don't think it's enough. I think there should be more training enforced by agencies. But the training could only give you the basic guidelines. I think once you're a certified cop and you're working, you end up becoming the type of cop you want to be. Either you're going to be someone that's going to be dedicated and you're not going to become biased and you're not going to see only malice in people, that you're going to try to be fair across the board, or you're just going to be someone that's going to be misguided, or you're just going to be someone that's going to be not the best for law enforcement. We see them in this career. We've seen some public incidents where they have been displayed where it kind of shows poor policing and bad decision making and really gives us a bad name. But there are those type of people in every profession. It's not just law enforcement. What people don't get to see about law enforcement is for every bad encounter that goes on social media, there was probably 20,000 good encounters that weren't captured. And that's the unfortunate part of law enforcement, because listen, social media and the media itself, the news media, they only work by ratings. And when you see positive encounters, people don't get turned on by that. They just move on to the next channel. They get turned on and excited by violence, by corruption, by the bad incidents. Yeah. And that's what generates ratings, and that's what people tend to lean towards.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And I think one of the interesting things that you said there was, once the training happens, the person decided the kind of cop they want to be, the kind of police officer they want to be. And the department, I think, the department, whether it's the state, the city, or the department itself, can do all the training and do all the scenario training they can do. But it is really up to that individual officer to really determine what kind of officer. Is it going to be one that's going to go by the book and have a good attitude and try to treat everybody fair? Or is it going to be the type of officer that's going to just be an a-hole, if I would say? I've dealt with both sides. I've had great encounters with officers who are respectful and everything. And, I've had, my fair share of encounters with officers that, in my opinion, don't even belong in the force or need some kind of attitude check because they just tend to go off on the wrong thing no matter what. So with that being said, what seems to be the common divide between the civilians and the law enforcement? What seems to be a common divide when it comes to the relationship between the public and law enforcement?
Well, you actually said something that resonates with me, because you and I grew up in the same neighborhood. Obviously we've known each other very long years. You were like family to me because most of my cousins, and we grew up together. And we grew up in the same neighborhood where I also have encountered very shitty experiences with cops growing up. But I didn't let that deter me from becoming a cop and being a good cop at that. Actually, I pride myself on being someone that's fair and someone that's not judgmental. I think the divide becomes where you're getting a lot of these kids that become cops who don't have life experience. You're getting kids that are 20, 21, 22, lived in one certain neighborhood, not necessarily, um, let's just say, for example, our neighborhood growing up was primarily black.
Right.
So I growing up, most of my friends, even till this day, most of my friends are black. They're not cops. Most of my friends are not cops. Most of my friends are childhood friends, and if not friends that I've met throughout the years as adults, they're not cops. The majority of them are black. So when I say that, I mean I can relate to a black person's way of being, their habits, the way they act, the way they talk. You have a kid that grows up in Westchester or in Kendall, who it's a primarily Spanish community, has never interacted with black individuals.
Right.
So he becomes now a cop, and now you have him encountering a black male that is 6 feet 230 pounds solid, who's getting loud and boisterous, and he thinks that the guy's intimidating him or trying to challenge him or wants to fight him. What he may not know is that he's just worked up, and that's just the way he acts when he's worked up. Um, you know, a lot has to do with how you're raised, where you grew up with, what social interactions you've had throughout your life. Obviously, you have to have interactions that understand different ethnicities, different cultures. White folks don't react the same as black folks in a time of need. Black folks don't react the same as Spanish folks. The reason why I'm primarily naming races is because a lot of the issues that we've had on social media has been primarily cops versus black. Um, I think, again, it has to do with the officers involved don't understand necessarily the black culture. They don't understand how people in the black community may be loud, not because they're trying to fight you, but it's just the way they talk. In my family, as you well know, our family doesn't speak low volume. They yell at each other. So I, at first, my wife was saying to me, like, why are you guys always fighting? And it took her a while to understand that we're not fighting. That's
We're
just
just
the way we
talking.
talk to each
We're
other.
just talking.
Exactly. So, you can go back and see a lot of these new kids that are becoming cops. Like I said, they're green. These kids are 20, 21 years old, no life experience, grown up in a one type of ethnical community, never intermingled with other ethnicities or races. And now they're handed a gun, a badge, and told out there to enforce the law. So they get power trips. They get scared. A lot of these incidents are because they get scared. And I'm not going to give the people involved here any passes. A lot of it also, human beings as a natural defense it's fight or flight. When you get an interaction with a cop, you are chosen. Your natural instinct is, do I fight or do I flight? Um, and a lot of these incidents that have occurred negatively for cops, it's always been a fight reaction. And what I've tried to explain to a lot of individuals is it's a domino effect. If the individual doesn't fight and just takes his chances and go to court, because at the end of the day, the cops are not the court personnel, they're not the jury, they're not the judges, they're just there to enforce the law. If they take their chances and go to court, they're alive today. They're alive today. They might beat the rap, they might not beat the rap, but at the end of the day, they put themselves in a situation to face a jury, face a judge, and see what path their life leads. But I'm not also going to say that some officers weren't quick to make poor decisions,
Yep.
because I've seen that as well. I've seen some situations where the officers did make poor decisions real quick. They didn't give time to analyze the situation and get a better control of the situation before they acted, and led to unfortunate someone dying or whatnot. So both parties are to blame. I honestly don't believe that this is a cops versus blacks society. I just think that because the poor incidents that have involved African Americans is the ones that are blasted on media, social media is what makes it look that way. And like I said earlier, for every, if you look at law enforcement throughout the United States, and I'm going to throw just guesstimated numbers here. If you add up the total amount of police officers in the United States, you probably reach 200,000 officers. That is it. What does the United States have a population of what? 3 billion? Something like that?
United States about 350 million.
Okay. Okay. 350 million citizens, and you only have 200 to 250,000 total cops in the US. Those cops encounter on a daily basis maybe 15 to 20,000 encounters that most of them, 85% of them, 90% of them turn out positive because they're usually bullshit. There's usually nothing going on. It's just a loud barking dog and everybody's happy. Like every profession, there's going to be some bad incidents. And unfortunately, with today's social media platform, all those bad incidents get captured and people want to put them on the media and put them on blast to get the ratings, to be the first ones on there showing it, to just create a crowd, to start a riot, to whatever the reason may be. It's just I think as these departments hire these young kids, there needs to be a lot more cultural interactions, a lot more. I don't think you should hire so young. I don't think it should just be 20 years of age and a high school diploma and you're good to be a cop. I think there should be a minimum age of 25. These people need to have some kind of life experience and not grow life experience in the job. They should have it before they get on the job. But I'm not anyone to make those decisions. I think those are a lot of the issues that we have.
Oh, you made some great points there, and one of the things that social media in its totality is a very useful tool for law, in my opinion, very useful tool for law enforcement. It's good for law enforcement. It's counterproductive in some ways for law enforcement, and because it can impede different investigations and whatnot potentially. Um, before we talk about the social media aspect, you spoke about how in your opinion, that age, that somebody probably should be a little bit older before becoming a police officer. What age do you think that is, or what other life experience do you think they should have? Maybe 4 years of college, or maybe a little bit older. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I don't necessarily think that someone that comes straight out of college would make a good cop. We've had those. I've had those partners where they were bachelors, PhDs, and they were just nerds. They were afraid of their own shadow, and it boils down to it's not being disrespectful, but some individuals are just not meant to be cops. Some individuals who, and it's not saying that. Listen, again, we grew up in the same neighborhood, and that our neighborhood wasn't the easiest neighborhood to grow up in. So going through everything we grew up with, you learn different cultures, you learn what to look for on the street when there's malice. You tend to not trust everything. There's certain things you pick up on like a sixth sense because of the where you grew up in. This is not the same element that someone who grew up in Boca is going to have if you throw him in Miami Gardens.
True.
If you have a kid that grew up in Weston all his life, and now you're putting him in the pork and beans in the city of Miami, this kid's gonna be, shitting in his pants 24/7. As opposed to someone like us who may have grown up, in Carol City, and then you put me now to patrol Alapata. Like I know what to look for. I kind of, I've seen it, experienced it. We have friends that are in the element, quote unquote. So you know how to play it a little more cautious, and you know how to give people the benefit of the doubt because the element, the environment. I think 25 years of age to me is a good age to start being a cop. I myself was 23 when I went to the academy, but I didn't get hired till I was 25. It has to the departments really have to do measuring when you interview these individuals. And you can kind of tell when you talk to some of these kids that they're just kids. Like they have no reason being a cop. However, law enforcement is also a business. There's a need for cops.
Yeah.
So when you have a good qualified applicant on paper, meaning no background issues, no credit issues, passed all his tests, it's hard to find that with someone that has some life experience. Because listen, part of having life experience is unfortunate run-ins with law.
Yeah.
Part of having life experiences is experiencing certain drugs. That's part of growing up. I'm not going to say arrests and stuff because Lord knows you and I haven't been arrested. But you have to experience with things, experiment with things, do things, to learn from them. And just because you're perfect on paper doesn't make you a perfect cop. So I think 25 years, I think a better job at analyzing the individual that you're interested in, understanding where this person grew up, how they grew up, what kind of friends they had, will help you make a better judgment call. And it doesn't mean you're going to get it right, but I think that putting some of those things into play, you end up with better officers on the street, people that have been there, done that, and know what to look for. Someone that's not going to be quick to judge someone just because they have a suspended license. Like they're going to be compassionate about the fact that someone may have a suspended license because they've had some troubles in life and they're trying to get their act together.
Right.
You have some of these young kids that doesn't resonate with them. They just see suspended license, take them to jail, tow the car. And they don't realize the long-term effects you're creating for this individual just for a suspended license. Like they don't get it. It's you can understand that, meaning me, because again, my upbringing of seeing family members and friends that have had situations like that and how it can easily ruin their lives, as opposed to understanding that sometimes those things are just mishaps that are easily overlooked. Doesn't make the person a bad person, it just means that they fucked up somewhere and they just need to correct their actions. And then you as the officer have the choice. Do I really want to screw this person's life? Or do I want to try to help this person, which, by the way, is also part of our job. Our job is not just to arrest people and take them to jail. Part of our job is to educate and help others when they're in need. And people, some of these young cops, they always block that part out. They think that being a cop is just enforcing laws, taking people to jail, and that's it. And their job is done.
That's very well said, because I think if every officer were to enforce every single law, I think we would need about a jail every other mile, because everybody would be in jail in one way or another.
Of course.
I've had my license suspended, many moons ago, and I've had officers, take compassion on me and just said fix this within 30 days or whatever, whatever he said there. And I've had to deal with a cop that wanted to tow my car because my tints were too dark. And fortunately, another cop came behind and he gave me off with a warning and whatnot. But like you said, it's about the decisions the cops make and what kind of cop they want to be. You also mentioned about social media, and social media over the last 10 plus years has really turned into its own enigma over here. It's really has been, I think, a very good tool and a very counterproductive tool, like I said earlier, for law enforcement. And we'll break this up into two categories here. So I think that social media could be a good thing because it gives a chance for law enforcement to get information out to the public instantaneously and to get it to the masses instantaneously as quickly as possible, so that a missing person or a certain video they need investigation or help from the public on, in your case as being a detective, can possibly get feedback and different clues and different tips that can help you solve a case quicker than back before the days of social media, Twitter and Facebook and even MySpace and whatnot. What is your take on social media from the good aspects of social media when it comes to law enforcement and detective work?
You're 100% correct. It is a double-edged sword. having had investigations which social media, Facebook has helped me catch the bad guy and actually introduce evidence into court, which led them to take pleas. Um, Social media does work off in a positive for us, not always, but in most cases, because the one thing social media stands for, it's about bragging. People love to post on there technically to brag. Criminals are not the smartest individuals at times, and yes, social media tends to lead to them if you know how to work it and you know what you're looking for. Like you said, also when you have juveniles, when you have missing elderlies, when you have hot cases, there's no better tool than social media because you're going to be able to put the word out there much faster. If that platform alone can reach millions of people in seconds, the minute you press enter or send or post. Um, in that aspect, yes, social media for relaying information, for even for towns, even for cities, whenever they're doing events or food giveaways or any kind of blood drives or whatever, putting this stuff on their social media gets immediate responses from residents and everyone else that follows. So when it comes to that aspect of social media, it is a positive tool. It is an extra tool we can use. It has developed and generated some very good leads and cases for me personally. In some of my cases, I had actually a strong arm robbery that I resolved through social media. It was an offer up strong arm robbery that I was able to 6 months later catch this guy because social media helped me out a lot. A lot of my colleagues feel the same way. Social media has helped them catch commercial burglary subjects, residential burglary subjects, etc. In that aspect, yes, it has helped us. It is a positive tool if it were only for that. However, I know your second part of your question is going to be the opposite of that.
Well, the opposite part of that is obviously what I don't want to say obviously the opposite of good is bad. I don't want to say it's a bad, but in my view, it could be counterproductive because social media, all of a sudden you have a million lawyers, a million doctors, a million police officers that have never done
Exactly.
the profession and all of a sudden have their own view and they think their view is correct and what the officer did or didn't do is wrong or right or whatnot. And uh, it's kind of productive because what it does, it takes a case or it takes a particular news story that uh, person A was in a person. This police officer was involved in a shooting with this civilian, and the officer is this race, and the public and the what are they gonna say
Victim.
the
The
public.
victim.
I'm sorry.
The perception. The public
Yeah,
perception.
yeah, and it's this racing color, and it's more of all of a sudden it gets out there to social media, and everybody just makes it go viral. And one of the things, and I've been guilty on it from time to time too. So I'm not going to say that I'm perfect on it, but I always try to get the more facts out before trying to uh, make an assessment as far as whether something was right or wrong or done correctly or who's guilty, not guilty, whatever. Uh, you had this like just recently you had this lady down in Dade County that, I mean, horrific, just drowned her kid, or pushed her kid into a lake and tried to say that it was a carjacking. And my wife, when she saw that, she's like, none of this story makes any sense. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And social media went wild with it. And all of a sudden, the facts come out that the mother actually did this on purpose and whatnot. And when more facts come out, then a lot of people tunes they change, and that goes on for just about every story that happens on social media, whether it's political or not political. Everybody wants to get their opinion out right away, and like I said, I've been guilty of it too. So the not productive thing is all of a sudden you have 100,000 plus in a city that think all of a sudden law enforcement is um, the not good people. They're the guilty people. They're the enemy of the people. When really, if you really let the facts of the case work out, it tends to be opposite in a lot of, not every sense, but a lot of facts. So what is your perspective regarding the not productive part of social media?
Um, I'm just going to add to everything you said because what you said was exactly it. The negative side to social media is that it will tear down all the good that one profession has done. And necessarily, it doesn't have to necessarily mean police officers. It could be this same platform could be used against doctors, nurses, attorneys, a sports athlete, LeBron James, whoever. If you had enough to make him look like a villain, that's it. It's over.
Right.
Yes, you have incidents on social media that want to automatically place one entity versus another because it draws the ratings, and that's just the way this society unfortunately lives. That lady's incident that you're talking about earlier here in South Florida, when the story first broke, and she described two suspects that kidnapped her kid and were asking for guns and drugs, and she described as one of them as being a black male. And I just started reading some of the comments on this, and you can see quickly a certain ethnicity was attacking the African American community because she said it was a black male that kidnapped her kid. And the minute I heard the story, I looked over, my wife asked me, do you believe this? And I told her, I was like, I will not be surprised if she or a family member gets arrested for this incident because it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, same thing
But
my
like
wife said.
every
Yep. Yep.
yeah, like every incident that we've discussed over the years in social media, I always tell people, don't react to the initial story, react to the final outcome. There's always going to be facts that come out. And I will be the first one to tell you that if the facts at the end of the day lead to some shady, dirty, corrupt cop, and fuck them, send them to prison, send them to jail. We don't need that shit in our profession. But don't be quick to judge, is what I tell people. Same thing as this incident. Don't be quick to judge. And not only a day later or so after the cops did their great job of reviewing video and calling her bullshit, she confessed. And now the same people that were bashing the African American community, I never saw them coming back out and saying, oh, I'm sorry. No, they were just quick to run with, oh, she said it was a black man, must have done it. Here it is. It is what it is. Same thing goes for our profession. Uh, it's easy to show an incident that occurred, but what people don't show is the before the incident and the aftermath. You know, it's quick to show an individual getting shot by the cops, but there is no video or people don't post the 15, 20, 30 minutes prior to that the officers have been trying to talk this person down or trying to tell this person to relax, or maybe this guy just stabbed his wife, maybe this guy just raped a kid. Like, they don't show that. They just
Yeah.
show the initial response of what may have just happened, a firing, a shooting, and someone's dead. Shame on the cops, but let it play out. Let's find out what happened. Let's find out what transpired. There was a recent incident. This one's actually more recent, which is the one north somewhere. A group of detectives were serving a search warrant at some apartment complex, and it was the middle of the night. It's like 12. It was like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and they barged in through the door, and there was a black man and a black female sleeping in the bedroom, and the male thought someone was breaking into his apartment, and he starts shooting, and the cop shot back, and the girl ended up dying, unfortunately, and the individual ended up getting arrested and charged with attempted murder of the cops.
Oh wow.
And I hear this story, and I'm just like, when you serve a search warrant as an officer, as a detective, this is something that has to be damn near perfect.
Yeah.
Like, you need pictures, you need, like, the search warrant has to be described to the T. When I tell you, I've handled several search warrants, and when I tell you that you have to do your due diligence, and if the house has a little dog on the door in the top right hand corner, you need to describe that dog in the search warrant, just to make sure that the officers who are entering know or believe that they're at the right place. Well, what happened in this situation? It was the wrong apartment. They entered the wrong apartment. The apartment they were supposed to enter was on the other side of the complex. An innocent female lost her life. This guy obviously ended up not getting charged because they realized that the cops dropped the ball. The chief of police ended up resigning, and a lot of people want to sit there and say, oh, the chief just got a slap in the wrist. Well, yes and no. He resigns because he's the ultimate person in charge of the department, and this was a royal fuck up. As a detective, as a department entirely, this was really bad. Like, how you send a troop of officers into the wrong apartment at 2 in the morning to serve a warrant on an innocent person's house, and then there's a shootout and someone, an innocent person is dead, there's no coming back from that, and those type of incidents, I look at those and I'm like, shame on the officers, shame on the detectives, shame on the detective that put this warrant, because when you serve a warrant and when you put it together, you have to be to the T and you're on the scene. So if you did all this investigative work to get a warrant on this apartment or this house, then you are extremely familiarized with where this apartment is. So when you get on the scene and you see them about to breach what you should know is not the right door, you need to call that and say, hey, stop. This is not the right apartment. We're at the wrong place. So how this transpired gives us a horrible name. Yes, it was a royal fuck up for us and something that law enforcement is not going to be able to recover from for quite some time, especially not that community. That community is not going to trust cops for quite some time because this was really bad. But then there's incidents where people don't realize. I don't want to go back to this incident, but I will because it goes back to my point of earlier, the first domino that fell. Um, the first social media incident that was posted years ago, I think it was the one out of New Orleans, Louisiana. Was that wasn't the Trayvon Martin? It was the guy that was selling the videos at the gas station.
Okay.
Big heavy set blackmail, selling videos at the gas station. Well, two Louisiana officers they get called to this, obviously, because it wasn't that they were driving by and picked on this guy. They get called to this. There's the guy, I guess I'm assuming that the gas attendant called this in. There's a guy on my property selling CDs. So the officers respond, they see the guy, matches the description provided, they make contact with him. And the guy's like, listen, I'm just selling CDs to make money. I got to put food on my family. I'm just trying to make rent, which was cool. The officers weren't going to try to arrest him at that point. They're just trying to make sure he's legit, doesn't have any warrants. So, they were like, all right, cool. What's your name? Let's run you, make sure you're good to go. And then for officer safety, you pat down because you want to make sure this person is not a threat to you.
Sure.
Well, it turned out that this individual did have a little revolver in his pocket. He is a felon, therefore he's not allowed to have a gun on him.
Right.
So he decided to fight. And long story made short, this is the incident where the officers were wrestling with him. One officer finally feels the gun in his pocket and he yells it, pulls back, draws his gun, and shoots him
I
right then and
remember
there.
that one, yeah.
I can't remember the name. It's not Trayvon Martin, but I can't
No,
remember.
no. I remember. Now that you described that story, I remember. I don't remember the names, but I remember about the wrestling and the thing on the
Yeah,
ground.
this was one of the first incidents that was posted on social media that was anti-cops, and it was like the cops were racist type thing. Well, I referred to that incident because this is the first domino that fell. The first domino that fell was that individual who decided to fight the cops at the gas station because he knew he was going to jail for carrying a gun. He knew it.
Right.
So if he decides to just take his licks and say, I know I was carrying a gun and I'm not supposed to, so let me take my chances before the judge and the jury and explain to them that the reason I'm carrying a gun is to protect the money I'm making for my family. Granted, it's still not legal to have a gun, but when you have a compassionate jury that hears, I'm trying to hustle to put food on my family's table. And there's a lot of criminals out here who are going to come steal the money I'm making. So I have a gun to defend myself. You might get a compassionate jury that's going to understand that and say, you know what? All right, we're not going to give you prison time. You're going to, do some community service, pay a fine, and you'd be living today.
Right.
So that's the first domino. So, I know everyone's quick to say that the cops shouldn't have shot him, but where I love to say is it's easy to Monday morning quarterback from the couch. You're not the one that's there wrestling a 6'4", 270-pound man who has a gun in his pocket.
Right.
So what I love to tell my friends, including, when this went down, including my black friends, that obviously we have one-on-one conversations over this, was if this guy just takes his like a man, hey, I fucked up, I got a gun on me, I shouldn't, I'm a felon, take me to jail, and I'll take my chances, and you own up your responsibilities. You made your decision. Now just take it before a jury and take your chances. You're alive today. That's it. The cops are not trying to fight nobody. The cops are not trying to get dirty. The cops are not trying to do paperwork. They're not trying to get hurt. They're not trying to get killed. They're trying to get back home to their families. So you as a man realize how you messed up and just say, hey, I got a gun on me. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to. Cuff up, go to jail. Here's the paperwork. Good luck. That's it. The dude is here today to talk about it. So I always tell people that it's a domino effect. You know, everyone needs to be held accountable for their actions. And that's one of those incidents where he should have been, the person that deceased should have been held accountable for his action. The officers didn't do nothing wrong. They were there for a call. They patted him down for officer safety. He decided to fight with them. They felt a gun, which they ultimately discovered a gun, and they shot him. The guy's reaching for his gun. What do you think he's reaching for his gun? Because right now he's in a fight mode. So he's reaching for that gun to try to use it to get away. So all the officers did what they were legally allowed to do. At the end of the day, when you think about it, he lost his life over selling CDs at a gas station.
Right.
So he chose to fight two cops because he was selling CDs at a gas station with a gun, as opposed to just take his licks, go before a judge or a jury, explain the situation, and maybe get a compassionate community that might let him off. But automatically, the cops are the bad people. Cops are the one that, and that riot went on for months. The chief there got ousted. Everybody, the officers had to resign and move because there was death threats, and no one was holding this individual accountable for his actions. No one saw the fact that you have a felon, a convicted felon with a firearm. No, they just saw it as a black versus cops incident. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's where the media, that's where social media hurts us. That there's a lot of individuals who are quick to want to jump to a conclusion, and police departments, law enforcement, hip hop artists, um, athletes. No one helps the situation. You and I grew up in '90s hip hop. What was '90s? What is, even to this day? What is music about? It's mostly anti-cops.
True.
So you see a lot of these kids that buy into that hype. You even hear athletes make anti-cop rhetoric. You hear, you know, um, hip hop artists, which is what captivates a majority of the community. It's just social media in that aspect. It's not a friend towards law enforcement. It's more of a foe in that aspect. And the good thing is that as an officer, as a cop, you should have a voice and you should speak clearly and direct and blunt. And like I said earlier, a lot of my friends are African American. So when these incidents do arise, I have several of those friends that reach out to me on a one-on-one basis just to get my opinion,
Sure.
and I tell them, like, this is what I think happened. I wasn't there. I don't know the facts, but let them come out. So it's one of these two scenarios. And if it's this scenario, then the cop acted right. If it's this scenario, then the cop fucked up, and you take it from there. But at the end of the day, they've come to learn not to be quick to judge. I think they're nowadays more of a, let's see what led to this before they're quick to start pointing fingers in the wrong direction.
I think you hit. I think you said the right thing. It was like you gotta let the facts come out, and the danger thing with social media is everybody wants to be the first to either make the comment or be the first to post or make the first thing to go viral or whatnot. It's what I like. It's the term I call trial by social media. It seems like social
Yeah.
media is like the jury and judge of whether you're guilty or not guilty. It's like trial by social media, and it is a dangerous thing. It sets a dangerous precedent for a lot of people because when a story first breaks out, people have all sorts of opinions, and then when the facts come out, those people that are clearly wrong in their opinions in the get-go, because they jump so quickly, they don't tend to either change their mind or re-see it differently, or they just stay silent and move on. And I always try to put in practice that let it play out. Wait a day or two. Wait a few days. Wait for more facts to come out to really make an informed opinion and to really come up with a better opinion, not just something that's going to play to the clickbait of social media or just to agree with people just to agree so that you could feel you can get some likes or something.
It goes back to that unfortunate UPS incident that happened a few months ago. You know,
Yeah.
everyone wants to criticize the way law enforcement handled that situation, but people that never did this job don't understand how or why law enforcement intervened when they did. It's hard to have people understand that these are individuals that, at initial response to the Coral Gables jewelry store, started shooting at innocent people. They were shooting at the employee that was defending the jewelry store. So right there, it shows you that these are not individuals that are going to be quick to just turn themselves in once they're caught against the wall. They're gonna, when you go into a mindset that you're gonna rob a jewelry store, you're gonna commit a crime, period, and you're gonna be quick to shoot your gun. That is someone that knows that they're in this and they're not going to jail, period. They're either gonna get away with this crime or they're ready to die for this crime. So the unfortunate aspect is there's a driver, an innocent victim that gets captured in this. And us as law enforcement, our job is to stop the threat before more innocent lives are taken. So you have two individuals in a UPS truck that are speeding down the turnpike, shooting their guns openly at cops behind them. Okay, down the turnpike, like this is the wild, wild west. Obviously, in a perfect scenario, you would end up with them running out of gas and no one around, and then there's just a shootout between them and the cops. But you have a UPS truck that's probably full of gas that can probably go on for hours, and chances are they probably would have let this go for hours. They probably would have. And it just so happens that this truck makes the wrong turns, ends up in the middle of traffic. Done. Like you're not going anywhere. Stand still. You're stuck. And now the cops are moving on to gain a better position to see these individuals, and now they get shot upon. Well, take the cop aspect out right then and there. Just as a human being who has a gun on you and someone shooting at you, guess what you're gonna do in return? You're gonna shoot back.
Yeah.
It goes back to the fight or flight. So now you have a bunch of cops that are trying to get a better advantage on this truck or being shot at, so they start shooting back. Now, of course, the initial response is, oh, they killed the UPS driver. And that may be the case. The point is, the autopsy has not been revealed. This investigation has yet to be closed. And if and when it shows that the UPS driver was killed by the gun of one of those drivers, I don't expect society to come out and thank the cops for doing what they did or apologizing to the cops for automatically finding them guilty. You know, because the autopsy is going to show that which bullet ultimately killed this individual. Okay. And whether or not it was a driver or the cops. And if the cops killed him by accident, then, you know, it's a tragic loss. But at that point, you have two armed, careless criminals who are shooting at cops in open daylight public, who have been shooting openly for the last couple of hours or last hour or so. So you unfortunately have to make those decisions in a split second where you're going to have to engage and hope that no one loses their lives. Because if you allow this to continue and the cops back off, how many innocent people were around this UPS truck? Let's say 15 of them in their cars. You just gave them 15 more hostages.
Yep.
People don't realize that. People think that cops are quick to just rush in and, you know, 3 people lost their lives, but don't realize that there was like 15 people around this truck that could have easily been hostages, that could have been those people's victims. So you could have lost 20 more people. Who knows?
Yeah, I remember being
But
in
so
a conversation with you about this very particular topic here, about this particular incident here. And people are like, oh, they should have shot the tires. They should have done this. They should have done that. And I'm thinking to myself, people, this is not the movies. You know, what they do in the movies, a lot of it's CGI. A lot of it's not even real. And it's like, you can't do what they do in the movies and try to do that in real life, you know, especially if you've never done this profession before. You know, and like you said, you know, it's so unfortunate. In fact, the UPS driver, I actually worked out at the same gym he did. I've had a few classes with him. I didn't know him personally, but I saw him before, and I was like, and I couldn't believe what I saw when his picture came across the screen as the individual who lost his life. But like you said, it's, no officer wants any life to be lost, even the criminal. You don't want to shoot. You don't want to never want to kill anybody. You never want to. An officer never goes in hoping that he goes and gets to go guns ablazing, every single day and gets to shoot down
Exactly.
anybody. I cops don't do that. I've never known any cop that wants to go and discharge a weapon. I'm sure 99.9% of the cops really hope they never have to discharge a weapon in the first place. But
You said that 100% accurate. That's a little unknown secret to society is a cop wishes to do an entire career without ever having to pull out his gun and shoot it.
yeah,
That's a fact. Because with shooting your gun and striking someone to begin with or killing someone, you're exposing yourself to a lot of
oh,
liability. Not only are you exposing yourself to a lot of PTSD and mental stress for just taking someone's life, but now you're exposing yourself to civil liability where you can lose everything you've worked hard for it.
yeah.
So, with that being said, do you really think that individuals are out here wanting to expose not only their brain, their mindset, but to expose everything that they're working for because they want to go shoot and kill somebody? No, it's ridiculous. As you said it, we hope that in whatever length your career is 25, 30 years, 35 years that you never have to pull that trigger. Is it possible that the day may? Yeah, that's why you signed up for this job. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that we're out there being trigger happy. We really want to just go home with a dusty gun and never have to pull it out, period.
Agree. I'm a concealed weapons carrier, and I have my license and everything, and I do carry my weapon most of the time. And I pray to God I never ever have to use it. I never want to use it. I don't care what people call me to my face. I rather just walk away. I never want to be in a position, but I carry because I care for my own safety at times. If need be, and for my family. I have children and a wife, and but I pray to God I'm never in that situation. I pray that I never ever have to use it other than going target practicing at a gun range.
No, you're right. Me growing up, believe it or not, even being a cop, I've never been a gun person. I never cared for them. I never owned them before being a cop. Never carried them, even as a cop. I rarely carry a gun. But like you said, when you start seeing incidents like the shootings in the movie theaters a couple of years ago, and you start realizing that in any simple restaurant you're having dinner with your significant other, someone can come in guns blazing, you start realizing that there's more to life than just you. You want to
Yeah.
protect your loved ones. And because of that, I started carrying my gun more often because of what society is right now with a lot of individuals that are just batshit crazy and want to start killing innocent people. Um, but yes, even as a civilian, as a cop or whatever, I don't have a CCW. I carry because I'm allowed by the state of Florida because I'm a certified cop.
Right.
But do I ever wish to have to use this? No, I will use it to defend my loved one and to
Right.
defend myself or to defend someone else because of my job. That's it. Doesn't mean I ever want to kill someone. Oh, I could barely even shoot an animal if I had to. So that's
Yeah.
just that's just what people think. The misconception of cops is that we're out there trying to kill people. No, we're out there we are humans just like you are. Depending on the city you work for, you have a lot of stress on a daily basis that, yeah, sometimes we make poor decisions because of the amount of stress that we're allowing to build. Um, yeah, it's not an excuse, but people need to see the humanistic side to being a cop also. We're not machines, we're not robots, we're not meant to be perfect, period. And that's in every profession. It doesn't matter what profession you're in. It could be a pilot, it could be an accountant. You're not going to be perfect. It does not exist. Well, the same thing goes for law enforcement, same thing goes for the military. As much training as those individuals do on a day to day basis, I'm sure they've made their fair share of mistakes, whether they've come out public or not. I know they have because I know military personnel that have told me that they've made mistakes.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, it just comes with it just comes with the nature of the beast. It's just the way it is.
So, as the topic of this whole discussion is regarding law enforcement and the public, what is your advice to the public when it comes to uh, engaging in it? Whether it's they got pulled over because of a speeding, or they got pulled over for whatever infraction, or a cop just approaches them on a sidewalk. What is your advice to the public when it comes to those kind of interactions with the law enforcement?
Well, my first advice would be is set your pride aside. Being prideful is where it leads a lot of individuals into bad situations with cops. It's a little known secret amongst cops that if you pull someone over for an infraction, a traffic infraction, and that person immediately starts with, "Why are you pulling him over? I didn't do anything." Well, guess what you're most likely going to get? You're going to get not one ticket, but two tickets of whatever infractions you committed because now you just challenged this cop for no reason. Now, if you're someone that's prideful who could just sit there and say, "Oh, I don't know why you stopped me," or, "Oh, I'm sorry, I ran that stop sign," or, "Yes, I did run that light," or, "Yes, I'm going a little fast because I'm running late," guess what you're going to get 85% of the time? You're going to get a compassionate officer that's going to understand where you're coming from. It's going to let you off with a warning,
Agreed.
period. See, so if you are an individual that the cops get called upon you, don't think that the cops just stop their car randomly and decided to fuck with you. No, if the cops are having an interaction with you, it's because someone called this in. So all you can do is just set your pride aside. If you know you have no warrants, you know you have no drugs, you know you have no guns on you, no weapons, no nothing, you have nothing to hide. Set your pride aside, give them your name, DOB, let them run you and come back that, yeah, you have a history of this, but you don't have nothing pending. Okay, cool. Oh, you don't have anything on you. Okay, cool. Listen, this is why we got called. Just get out of here, go home, whatever, finish your night, do what you got to do. And that's it. I
Mm.
mean, listen, I know that us as humans, we don't want to be told what to do and we don't want to be questioned because it's just human nature. But there's a profession that exists to question individuals because you're trying to keep a community safe. So the sooner you understand that and accept that, and you can put your pride aside. And yes, there's going to be asshole cops that are going to push you and they're going to be disrespectful and they're going to be assholes just to get you to budge because once you budge, they got you. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for that excuse to be able to lock you up. If you don't give them that excuse, you win. They walk away, they don't get satisfied, they move on to someone else.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. This is setting your pride aside. In my view, to set your ego aside too. Your pride and your ego, to set it aside. I think I tell everybody just obey, listen, obey. If he tells you to, he or she tells you to sit, just sit. If he tells you to stand over there, stand. If he tells you to get out of the car, just listen, obey. Because in the end, if you think that officer is wrong, if you think that officer is not is violating the law or not following the law or whatever, have your day in court. Put yourself in front of the judge because. Like you said earlier in the conversation, the cop is not the judge and jury. The cop is not the final say. Have your day in court. Present the facts of the case because I've been able to have tickets dismissed because the cop, didn't do something right or whatnot. And, I would say just listen, obey, be quiet, answer what needs to be answered, keep the attitude in check, and set your pride and ego aside. And I think that's, my take and what I've, told to other friends and even my oldest kid, if this ever happens, this is what you should do.
Yeah. I've given the same advice to a lot of my friends, and believe it or not, they've said that that's exactly what works. You know, well, they've realized not through their mistakes, but they've seen people of their same culture who don't listen to their advice, who decide to want to challenge cops in open street, open forum, and they end up either with tickets or they end up arrested, and it is what it is. But some of my friends, yeah, that are black, and they've asked me, and I told them the same thing. I said, "Listen, bro, you realize that the minute you just tell a cop like, yeah, I'm sorry, I was speeding for X, Y, Z, or yeah, I did run that stop sign. Oh, that's it, man. We, believe it or not, are not trying to get our hands dirty. We're not trying to do any additional paperwork. We're human like the rest of everyone else. We are called here because someone called us in. We just come here, we check this out. You guys are legit. You guys aren't doing anything criminal. None of you got any warrants. So you're good to go. Get out of here whenever you get a chance because obviously someone doesn't want you. Have a good night." And that is it. You move on. And the sooner people understand, like you said, put your ego aside, put your pride aside. Because I've been there. I've been that 17-year-old kid with being pulled over by cops because I had 212s with bass in my trunk and I had to sit on the curb while it's wet because he thinks that I'm some kind of drug dealer or gangbanger. And yeah, it's upsetting and it's disrespectful and you get upset about that. But guess what? I'm not gonna win that battle on the street. Not
Correct.
gonna win it. So you just let them do whatever they got to do. And if you really want to take that battle, you go to the station, you file an informal complaint against them to internal affairs, and you go from there. And that's it. At least there's an avenue. If you got to get a ticket, then you, like you said, you go before the judge and you plead your case. And like you, I've had tickets dismissed as well. But trying to win an argument or a battle on the side of the road with a cop is not going to lead to anything good. It's really
Agreed.
not. It's just going to lead to pissing him off to the point where if this is a traffic stop, now you just earned yourself every violation he can find. And at the end of the day, violations add up, and you're talking about $400, $500, $600 in violations for what?
Pride and ego,
For
mostly.
pride and ego.
Mostly. So the other side of the coin are the police officers as well. So when you went through your training, with like you mentioned that you actually had a training officer that you highly respect and is like and it's the best in town in your opinion. Uh, what advice did he give you in handling situations? What was his advice, and what is your advice to up and coming police officers or those who are thinking about becoming officers or in the beginning stages of becoming police officers? What is your advice when it comes to dealing with the public and the situations we've talked about?
Listen, if I had family and friends that want to become cops, the first thing I do is tell them to become firefighters. I try to steer them away from this profession because this profession is not going to get any easier as society evolves. But with that being said, obviously there's a profession, there's a need, and people want to become cops. So the most advice I give a lot of these young guys is not to sweat the little things. Okay. A lot of the things that you're going to encounter are not what you think they are. So look at the big picture, be compassionate, try to understand where everyone's coming from, whether it's the victim, whether it's the possible subject. Um, like understand what their shoes are because not everyone has the same lifestyle. Some people do have to hustle. Some people do have to do possible some illegal activity in the sense of nothing like killing a person or dealing drugs or robbing banks or whatnot. But yeah, people have tints in their cars that are dark. People have bass in their cars. Some people drive with suspended licenses because they don't even know that some past violations suspend your license. People don't even know that. So they don't even know that sometimes letting your insurance lapse can lead to a suspended license. I've had officers that are cops. I'm sorry, I had cops that are friends of mine who've had their license suspended because their insurance lapsed for 3 days and they weren't even aware of this.
Wow.
So try to be understanding and try to allow that to dictate your actions. Don't be quick to judge and make a bad decision that you're going to later on regret. But again, from the start, try to tell a lot of these young kids too to become officers in big departments. If you're going to start this career, start it in a big agency, where if you make some small mistakes, you can learn from them and use that experience immediately because you'll be able to encounter something like that sooner than later, as opposed to a small town or small city where not much goes on. It's hard for you to learn. It's hard for you to grow because you don't have the action, you don't have the criminal activity, you don't have the element, you don't have the environment to learn on a day-to-day basis. These type of calls, these type of people, et cetera, et cetera. So it's mainly just try to be human, try to be compassionate, try to be even keel. Don't discriminate, don't profile. As many people in law enforcement that may tell you to profile, like don't fall for that bullshit. Everyone treat everyone equally. At the end of the day, you treat people how you want to be treated, or how, better yet, how you expect your family members to be treated. Because you want to bust somebody up, guess what? There's a ton of other cops that may bust up your sister, your mom, your wife, your brother, your sister, your girlfriend, etc. So keep that in mind. Your kids, even more so. I dealt with an individual in law enforcement that his his thing was little bags of weed. He hated it. He arrested all these juveniles every time he had a chance. He was juvenile after juvenile after juvenile going to jail for little minority amounts of weed, a little blunt here or there, a little cigarette butt here and there. And that's what he took pride in until he realized he had two young sons who were growing and said to himself, my kids could be in that situation. And that's when it took him to say, maybe I need to reevaluate how I'm ruining all these kids' lives for small amounts of weed that at the end of the day resulted in nothing. You didn't do nothing. You didn't clean up the city. You didn't, these people didn't give back anything to society. And at the end of the day, you just ruined their futures because now they have an arrest record on their file. That's all you did. And it took him to realize maybe my two boys might encounter someone like me and I'm going to get fucked because my kids are going to get fucked. And that's when he was like, yeah, maybe I should change my way of looking at things. And he evolved. It's part of growing up. It's part of, like you said, have life experience. And that's what it took for him to realize, yeah, I need to cut this shit out and focus on the real big fish as opposed to all these little small guppies.
Well, no, that's some really good advice there for both the public and officers that are current or up and coming. That's some really good advice, and I really appreciate you joining me on the discussion regarding law enforcement. And I really hope we could do another one in the future with other questions and other comments that we have. So everybody that's listening and watching on YouTube or on the podcast, submit your questions below. I know this police officer is really engaging and will answer questions accordingly, or give me the answer and I'll give it to you. So leave your question and comments below. Subscribe to the channel because there will be more of this in the future regarding not only law enforcement, but other topics as well. So please don't forget to subscribe to Untamed Opinions on YouTube. There's also Untamed Opinions on the podcast on Podbean, which is a podcast form. And Detective, I really appreciate you joining me today and taking your time to discuss these questions.
Really pleasure you having me. I really thank you for this opportunity, and I really do hope that we get to hopefully answer some questions and do this again. I mean, it's always one of those things where you need people that do this line of work to kind of put out some perspective to help our career and our profession. And I hope to be able to do that and answer whatever questions I can moving forward. So it's actually been fun, bro. I look forward to this again.
Oh, this was a blast. I really enjoyed this discussion, and we'll do this again in the future. We'll do a part 2 on it somewhere down the road.
Whatever you want, bro. Brainstorm. It's on you.
All right, we'll do this again. I appreciate it. Stay safe.
All right, homie. You too.
All right.